Take Off, a Points and Miles podcast by 10X Travel. I'm your host, Bryce, and today I am joined by Emily and Travis. How are we doing this morning, everyone?
Pretty good.
I'm doing well. I'll be doing better once I move this fan out of my video because I care about what you can see in the background of my video.
A special shout out to everyone watching us on video. We do publish all these on YouTube. If you want to take the audio and make it into a visual experience as well, I highly recommend.
You can see my fan.
You can see your fan. We can see your face, all of us, and just generally engage us a little bit more and, maybe judge our choice of decor behind us or whatever else you want to throw in the YouTube comments. It's already been done at some point, but feel free to jump in.
I've got the airplanes behind me, so that means that I'm winning.
I'm not even going to challenge that one. Here we have show and tell time. What's that?
This is a Boeing 787, I think, or 737. We've got
it's an appropriate plane for today's topic.
A 747. You can kind of see the upper deck up here. You got the upper deck windows.
Beautiful.
Very detailed.
And a 777. So no upper deck, but it is a plane.
Boom.
So, yeah.
Well, didn't anticipate starting this out with show and tell of the toys that are on your shelf behind you, but we'll go with it. If you're still new to Points and Miles or feel like you just need a refresher, we recommend going back and checking out episodes 1 through 6 of our show. That's where we cover some of the basics, the fundamentals of Points and Miles. And of course, for any other lingering questions, be sure to join our Facebook group, the largest Points and Miles community on Earth, currently over 350,000 members. Today's episode, it's that time of year again. The leaves are changing. The pumpkin-flavored things are hitting shelves everywhere. And from a Points and Miles perspective, it's time to talk about the Southwest Companion Pass. That season, if you will, is once again upon us. Everything's going to be starting here soon. It's a pretty nuanced strategy. There's a lot to know. We hope to kind of give you everything you need to know here in today's show. We're going to be talking about how to earn the Southwest Companion Pass, some things to consider before you start working towards earning it, the value you can expect to get out of it, how to use it, and more. So with that said, let's just jump right into the main episode content on Southwest Companion Pass. And to start out, Emily, can you tell us what is the Southwest Companion Pass?
Yeah. From my perspective, it's one of the most valuable and easy to use perks in this hobby. It's essentially a buy one, get one free for you and a friend on any flight, any Southwest flight that has one open seat on it, at least one. So you're only paying for the taxes and fees on your companion's flight, which those are usually around $5.60 for any domestic flights. For some of the international destinations that Southwest flies to, I think it's still generally less than $100. So it's a great way to bring a friend for free or mostly free on any plane that has at least one open seat. You may have heard in this hobby that there are some other airlines that have companion passes. A lot of those have stipulations, whereas the Southwest Companion Pass, there are rules, but they're pretty relaxed. So with other airlines, you may have heard that you can only use them once. They're only applicable to cash fares. You can only use them for certain destinations, or there's fees on top of them beyond just the $5.60. There's dates you can't even use them on. So none of that applies to Southwest. You can use it unlimited number of times in the period that you have it. So you could have it for a year. You could have it for 2 years. You can use it on as many flights as you want during that period. And there's no blackout dates. There's no destination restrictions, nothing like that. It's pretty much as long as there's an open seat, you can book your companion with you on that plane.
I would be curious in the comments for everyone to, if you think that you've used your companion pass more in a single year than anyone else, please throw in the comments how many times you used it. Because I feel like we have just finishing up a handful of meetups, and I've talked to so many people who, when companion pass comes up, they'll tell me how they use it like once a month or more, and it's incredible.
I was looking back at 2023 because I was keeping track of how many Southwest flights I took and how often I used my companion pass. And I don't expect to set any kind of records, but I did fly 11 one-ways on Southwest. So I feel like that's
that's got to be in the running.
I definitely got.
That's almost one a month.
Yeah, I definitely got my use out of it for sure. And most of those were not spaced out by a month; they were like back to back.
For a particular use case, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later in the episode.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to shout out. We talk about other airlines' companion passes, as they call them. If you're watching, you'll see my air quotes, versus Southwest's. And where the difference really comes is understanding other airlines. It's a perk, right? You might get it for spending a certain amount on the airline's credit card or just having the airline's credit card. Southwest's companion pass is almost more like a status tier that you earn with Southwest. So it's not a here's this one-time perk benefit that you earn for just having a card open or reaching a certain spend threshold on a card in a year. It's like a status tier, so the benefits are good for a longer period of time. It's not a one-time use thing, right? Just like if you've got status with another airline, your eligibility for upgrades extends throughout the entire time that you have that status. So it works more like a status tier, and the benefit that you get from it is the ability to bring your companion with you.
Yeah, I find that the naming of them is so deceptive because all the airlines call them companion pass, but that's really the only thing that is the same between Southwest's version of that and the other airlines. So like the naming is a bit confusing, and what we tend to find is that most people overestimate the value of a air quotes companion pass on other airlines because they're not aware of those kind of hidden fees and restrictions. And most people underestimate the value of Southwest Companion Pass because they associate it with these more restrictive versions provided by their carriers. But there is one restriction to be aware of, and that is of who can be your companion. And Travis, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So first thing first, your companion has to be a person. It can't be a cat.
You don't say.
Yeah, we're looking at a cat who made a surprise appearance here on the video.
So sorry to all the cat people, but don't think that just because you're a dog person means it can be your dog. It also can't be your dog. It has to be a person. So
how limiting.
I don't know. I'm not a. I know. Like in this day and age, has to be a person. And it can only be one person. So here's kind of the restrictions on who can be your companion. You can only have one person designated at a time. So you can't have Bryce for some flights, Emily for some flights, Travis for some flights. You can only pick one person to be your designated companion. That being said, you can change your companion. You can change it up to 3 times per calendar year. However, when you change your companion, you do have to cancel any future bookings. So if Bryce was my current companion and I wanted to change it to Emily next week, I would have to cancel any flights that Bryce is on as my companion before I can change it to Emily. So you do have to have some timing and consideration if you're looking to change up your companion.
Yeah, to be very clear about that, you only have to cancel the flights of the companion who's tagging along, right? Not the initial flight of whoever owns the companion pass.
Yeah. Have either of you ever had to actually do this? I've not. So
many times.
I did it once, but it was in preparation for a flight that was going to be in 2020 that didn't end up happening. So it didn't end up being.
In 2020, did plans change? Was it weather, or I don't know what happened in 20? Oh yeah, that big thing. That
really cloudy.
Travel.
Really cloudy for like 9 months, 10 months.
So Bryce, you've had to do it. Like, what was your experience with changing your companion?
Yeah, I mean, I just had to hop into my Southwest account, cancel some future bookings. I think one particular use was I used it to take a friend to Vegas for like a bachelor party we were all going to, and I knew I had companion swaps like to spare, so I canceled a bunch of my wife's companion tickets to the future, took this person to Vegas. But then like the moment I got home, I think even in the airport on the way home from Vegas, I switched it back and then rebooked everything. So it wasn't particularly difficult, but it is something to be aware of.
Yeah, it's one of those things that sounds scarier than it is. As Emily mentioned before, like you can add your companion as long as there's a seat on the plane. It doesn't have to be in the same fare. So if you booked a one and get away and there's only business select, doesn't matter. You can still add your companion so long as there are seats available on the plane. And often seats don't sell out until close to the last minute. So even if you need to change your companion and then change them back to someone else, if those flights are a few months away, you're probably in the clear. Something that I've seen some people do is they'll go to Southwest and just try to book, I think 8 or 9 tickets is the max that it'll sell you. And you can kind of see how many seats are left by doing that and say, oh, okay, well, it's pretty likely I'll be able to add my companion.
I like to do that to see if maybe I'll have an empty seat next to me before, like as I'm getting on the plane, I'm like, how many are left? Okay. We're not a completely full flight, but that happens so rarely. I feel like every time I get on a Southwest flight, they're like, people are going to be strapped to the wings. Let's stay safe, everybody.
Anyone volunteer for the luggage?
Yes, we are down to lap seats only at this point. Please select the first lap that you encounter.
Yes.
Don't keep walking toward the back.
I am curious, though, and I know it's hard to speculate, but with the looming seat changes with Southwest, I wonder how that will work with companions, especially if you're, canceling, switching to somebody else, and then trying to rebook them. Do you have to pay for a seat multiple times? Like, how does that? I don't know. I can't assume, and I'll just wait until Southwest tells me, probably. But
it will certainly impact Companion Pass use and strategy. I feel like us, like Companion Pass junkies, are really probably the only group who are not thrilled about the seat assignment changes. Like, I love the ability to book a last-second companion ticket and know with pretty high degree of confidence that we'll be able to sit together. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on this episode.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. One thing to keep in mind with the current setup is if you do, we mentioned a business select fare. If you book a business select fare and add your companion, they don't get all of the business select benefits. So they don't get group A1 through A15. It's essentially like adding them as a one and get away. It doesn't mean you can't purchase those perks. So it'll be really interesting to see how that translates. I imagine, yes, I'm speculating, but I imagine that you still have to pay for seat assignments and stuff for them separately if you want, which will maybe take a little bit of the ding out of the value. That's a weird sentence. It'll probably ding the value a little bit for most people, but it's purely speculation at this point.
So to keep us moving away from speculation and back toward hard facts, there are two kind of like publicly known ways to earn Companion Pass, at least straight off the Southwest website. Travis, can you tell us what those two ways are?
The two ways to earn the Companion Pass are the hard way and the easy way.
And we'll leave it at that.
Let's
folks.
start. Yeah, that's the episode. Nice chatting with us. We'll tell you on the next episode now. This isn't a Game of Thrones production. This is Takeoff. So you'll get the answers right now. The hard way, which we've joked about me doing, and who knows if I'll actually ever do it, is fly 100 Southwest flights in a calendar year. So roughly 2 times per week, 100 flights. That calendar year is important because it resets January 1st. So if you're at 70 flights, it's when you step on the plane. It's not when you book them. It might be when the plane lands. I don't know if it's when the plane takes off or when the plane lands.
It's probably when the points post, which would be slightly after the trip is completed.
Well, but it's we're on the flights one, the taking 100 flights a year.
I think Travis needs to be the data point again.
Yeah, here we go, Travis. What are you doing on New Year's Eve?
No. No. I'm not going to be the I'm not going to be the data point, because if I get it wrong, then the 99 other flights beforehand were pointless.
Right.
I think the important point of all this is this probably doesn't matter to anybody listening, and really to only like 50 people on Earth who actually do 100 flights on Southwest in a single calendar year.
Yeah. So let's not worry about that. But if someone knows the answer, drop it in the comments. It'll be interesting to know. I'm not going to Google it live. Let's talk about the easy way. The easy way is to earn 135,000 qualifying rapid rewards points, also in a calendar year. So even though 135,000 is a larger number than 100, there's a much easier way to earn those 135,000 qualifying rapid rewards points without ever stepping on a plane. Anyone want to take a stab at how you do that?
I would be happy to. And I'm going to keep it incredibly high level in general, because there are some moving parts that occur with kind of which cards and when, and the particular details of those offers at a given time. And for that, I highly encourage everyone to check out our article on 10x Travel. We'll be posting it right around the same time this podcast episode goes live. It's also covered in the course, but to speak very generally about it, there's a handful of different credit cards that can help you earn these points in Companion Pass, as Travis mentioned, without having to fly on Southwest at all. You know, I've earned a handful of Companion Passes in my lifetime, and I think every single one of them has been earned without having to get on a Southwest plane. Again, check out the details on the article on our website for which cards these are, and you're going to want to pay particular attention to the timing of opening these cards and when you try to earn their bonuses or cross the minimum spends. This is perhaps the most important and tricky component to conventional Companion Pass strategy, because you have to try to time when those points post around this whole calendar year restriction, which involves you tracking minimum spends and being careful not to hit them early. And quite a few people make a mistake with this timing. And the unfortunate downside there is that these mistakes can often ruin the entire process, where you might earn half of your points right at the end of the calendar year, and everything resets on January 1, and you earn the rest of them the next year. And now you've just earned halfway toward Companion Pass in 2 separate years and have very few options to kind of make that right. So do be very careful with the timing. Really, your best single resource to make this easy for you is to use a tool that we built called Companion Pass Mode in My 10X. It's completely free. You just hop in there and opt into it, and then it will guide you through specific strategy on which card to open and when. It will send you an email reminder. It will remind you when to hit the minimum spends. If you do that, it makes it pretty foolproof. If you don't, there's a decent chance of messing up the timing with a few common mistakes that we'll cover here in a bit. When applying for these cards, you want to make sure that you add your existing Southwest loyalty number to the application. If you don't, it can be fixed later, but it requires a bit of administrative hassle. Just try to do that ahead of time and make sure that all those points are going to credit to your account. And do know that there really is no ability to team up in this. We get a lot of folks who will ask, like, okay, can me and my partner kind of each do some aspect of this, and then one of us earns Companion Pass? The unfortunate answer to that is no. It's an individual sport, this Companion Pass season, and you will have to do it yourself. So again, check out the article. We'll link it in the show notes. It'll be on the website. It's in the course. It's in My 10X for the specifics on how those cards work.
Yeah, one thing that we haven't highlighted as well that I think is important is we've talked a lot about this calendar year, right? And Bryce just stressed it as when you earn the points, right? So taking this year at the time of recording, if you're listening to this in the future in a museum, then this will sound ancient. Let's take this year where you're starting to earn the Companion Pass. If some of your points post in December and then the rest post in January, those points that posted in December do not count anymore. It's a calendar year, not a rolling 12-month period. So if the year is 2024, it's only the points that post in 2024. When we roll into 2025, it's only the points that post in 2025. We unfortunately see people mess it up every year. Read the article and also understand how picking the right card strategy right now will help you have a backup in case you mess this up. The second part about that calendar year that's really important, and it's the place where you can really get the value from the companion pass, and why this time of the year is when we start talking about it. It's because the companion pass is valid for the year you earn it and the following year. So if you earn the companion pass in December of 2024, if you earn it December 30th, it'll be good for December 31st and then all of 2025, but it will expire at the end of 2025. By timing it now and earning it in, say, January or February of 2025, you'll have it for the entire rest of 2025 plus 2026. You can effectively get up to about 2 years versus getting effectively 12 months. So timing it like this is really important. And that's why a lot of times there might be some promotional offers to earn Companion Pass. There might be some very appealing offers halfway through the year that people get intrigued by. And it's why we generally don't advise it, because the value comes from the longevity with which you can have Companion Pass. A lot of times these promotional offers mean that you'll only get it for maybe a little bit more than a year and a half, or sometimes even just for the current year. So doing it this way lets you get up to 24 months, which is the longest time that you can have the Companion Pass for.
Yeah, the analogy that I often use when explaining this is Companion Pass is almost like a 2-day park ticket to like Disney World, for example. It would be silly to show up at like 8 p.m. on one day and then like cash that in to get like a couple hours on that first day and then the next day. Better to show up earlier in the morning, right? Get more out of it. And Companion Pass is the exact same way. We're going to go into kind of a little bit more detail later on like the timing around it and common mistakes and how to potentially avoid them. But kind of the bottom line thing to know is you got to earn 135,000 points in a single calendar year. Credit cards could potentially take you all the way there, but even if they take you most of the way there, you do have some options for earning those remaining points to get you over the hump. And can ask Emily to walk us through some of those in this next section.
Yeah, I think a lot of times what you'll find is that the sign-up bonuses that are offered on the card combinations will, like you said, get you maybe to 125,000 points. And there's still that gap that you need to close in order to earn the Companion Pass. So there's a couple ways we can go about doing this. And these strategies can also work too if you mess up the timing and you end up with 50,000 Southwest Rapid Rewards in 2024 and 75,000 in 2025. So don't only focus on these if you're just short a few. You can use these to try and make up a wider gap too. One of them is just credit card spend. So using the cards that you have, you can just continue to spend on them and earn the multipliers on different categories so that you keep building up that point stash. You can also refer people to the credit cards as well, and you'll get a referral bonus that counts towards your Companion Pass balance. You can fly Southwest. I wouldn't recommend just booking a flight as your first strategy for this, because there's easier ways to do it without leaving your couch. But if you need to, you can do that. There's also like shopping partners, shopping portals. So you can link your card to one of these portals, whether you're shopping or dining out, whether you're booking a hotel or a rental car, and you can earn additional points on those bookings. So I am one of the many people we see that have screwed this up in the past, as Bryce mentioned. And I did it as recently as last year with my P2. We just hit the spend a little bit too early on one of the cards, and we needed to use some of these methods. And I ended up just rebooking a hotel that we were already going to be staying at through a website called Rocket Miles, where you can kind of pick what currency of points you earn on your hotel booking. So we were staying at a Marriott, but I selected to earn additional Southwest points. And that, I think at the time, earned me an extra 17,000 Rapid Rewards points. So it's not a small amount, and it can be really helpful if there's a bigger gap that you have to close there. So there's lots of options. Don't stress if you're short, a little or a lot.
And of course, you do have the rest of that entire year to close that gap. So there's less of that kind of urgency going on there. So
Yeah. If you do mess it up and you need that time, sticking with Bryce's analogy, it's still better to use your 2-day park ticket at 8 p.m. than to not use it at all.
Yes.
You'll be salty about it, but you'll still do it.
However, it's important to note, though, that those are a lot of great ways that Emily recommended, but there's a number of ways that do not earn Companion Pass qualifying points. Not every point that you earn is an eligible point for Companion Pass. The general way to think about it is, and I'm going to kind of go through a list for you here in just a second, but the general way to think about it is points that are brought in, whether you're buying them or transferring them in, or they're kind of an extra promotion, generally do not count. Points that are earned directly in, whether it's through the shopping portals from Flying Southwest or credit card spend, as well as the sign up bonuses, do count. So it's a little nuanced and a little unclear, but that's kind of a general way to think about it. But some of the more common activities that do not count towards Companion Pass are points that you buy. So you can buy points from Southwest. Those don't count. You would actually kind of think that they would because you're giving them money, but they don't. Yeah, that one feels like it should, but you know what? I'm not running Southwest. So if y'all are listening, let us just buy the points and have them count. But also points that are transferred between accounts. So, Emily could transfer to her P2. Those points that were transferred to her P2 do not count.
And there's a fee to do it, right?
Yeah, there's never a reason to transfer Southwest points to another person.
Yeah. If you gift points. So if Emily was so nice to want to buy some points for me and gift them to me, unfortunately, those would not count either. Sometimes, Southwest advertises that points earned from program enrollment don't count. I actually don't know that I've ever seen them in recent history offer points for this, where you just get points for creating a loyalty account. But if they start it in the future, at least right now, those don't count. Flight bonus points. So if they're running a promotion where you can get 50% more points on a flight, those 50% points bonuses won't count. The base that you would have earned would count, but that bonus amount wouldn't.
Those ones should count too. In my personal opinion.
All of the I agree. Partner program transfers. So some hotel programs or other loyalty programs can transfer into Southwest. First of all, it's usually a bad value to do this in the first place. But those don't count. So for example, transferring Marriott points to Southwest would not count towards Companion Pass. The big one, though, that people get wrong, because most of the time this is the one that people think will or should work. And I know I'm certainly not guilty of this. I don't know who here might be.
Could be any of us. Could be anyone.
Yeah, could be anyone. Points transferred from a flexible currency. So we talk a lot about taking advantage of transfer partners of bank points, and there's certain bank points that transfer to Southwest. Those do not count towards Companion Pass. Let me repeat that for everyone here, whether you're listening or part of the recording. Points transferred from a bank to Southwest do not count. I'm going to let Bryce explain.
I'm just going to add some context here. I know this to be a fact because I have personally called Southwest and asked them about this due to some circumstance that involved me transferring points from a bank to Southwest and wondering why I didn't earn a Companion Pass, and then being informed that didn't count, and then taking like 30 minutes to just be sad about it. So yeah, some people make this mistake. It was a few years ago, but I did that and it was not pleasant.
I know we say often that it's probably not worth transferring from a certain bank over to Southwest because like outside of earning the companion pass, but it's just not a good value since the Southwest award chart is a fixed cost per point pretty much. But I think the exception is when you have the companion pass already, because then any points you transfer are worth double than what they were originally. It's essentially like making the transfer ratio 1-2. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. So some notable exceptions that don't count, some of which seem very intuitive, and normal, intelligent human beings could easily make those mistakes. But there's actually something to know that would help with all this, and that is that you can check your Southwest Companion Pass progress at any time just by logging into your Southwest account, either on a computer or in the app or on mobile, whatever. In your Rapid Rewards page, right there is a nice little progress bar. You can even look at account activity. So if you're ever curious, like, hey, I took that flight, were there bonus miles? Did that even count? You can just hop in at any time and see how that progress is looking. Just straighten your Southwest account. And again, that does reset every January 1. Though don't be alarmed. You don't lose your existing Southwest points when it resets. The process of earning them, kind of like the rat race, if you will, resets, but you still have all those Southwest points that you can redeem at any time in the future.
I think that's an important thing, and we probably have it to discuss later, just like a point I made earlier, but then I'm going to hop on to emphasize for people. You don't have to cash in 135,000 points to get the companion pass. It's you just get it once you accumulate 135,000 points in a calendar year. They say, here's your companion pass, but they don't ask for anything back. So you still have those 135,000 points to go and spend and take flights with. So that's something that trips people up sometimes. Once you do it the first time, you understand that. But you're not cashing in 135,000 points. Southwest is basically says, congratulations, you've reached this milestone of earning 135,000 points. Here's your reward. And you get both. That's the great thing. So when you're checking your progress and it resets January 1st, it's the same thing. Those points don't disappear. They don't go away. They just no longer count towards Companion Pass this year because you earned them last year.
And that is one of the most common things that people overlook, kind of how I mentioned earlier, that most people look at Companion Pass and it's better than they initially assume that it will be. And that's one of the things is you get that BOGO opportunity for nearly 2 years, but you also, in the process of doing it, earn roughly 3 to 4 round trip flights on Southwest for free. So like that is a full year of travel for a lot of people. And that's what makes it amazing. So I want to talk about kind of our own experiences with Southwest Companion Pass. How do each of you view this in the broader context of points and miles strategy? Have you earned it in the past? How many times, and how have you typically used it?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I've used it. I think I've had it every year since 2018. So back when I was living in New York, it was easy. I think they were still flying out of Newark at that point. They flew out of LaGuardia, so using the companion pass was pretty easy for me. Now that I'm in Denver, still easy. So it's definitely still a valuable part of my points and miles strategy. I've also kind of expanded where I'm using it to fly to. Like I'm flying to Belize in January nonstop on Southwest, which, when I first got the companion pass, I just assumed it would be all domestic flights and hadn't really looked into all the destinations that they fly. So if you've kind of gotten your head that Southwest only flies within, the continental US, it actually can get you a lot more places than you might think. So I still place a lot of value on it. I know I've already admitted that my P2 and I messed it up in the past year, but I do want to make a case for not intentionally screwing it up, but being able to salvage it. We ended up with, I think, 190,000 rapid rewards points after, doing the business card fix at the end there, and that meant that instead of having, like Bryce said, enough for maybe 10 one-way flights throughout the year, usually in the past when I've gotten the companion pass, I've just kind of like burned through all the points by the end of year 1. But we're entering year two territory soon, and I still have a good chunk left. So don't screw it up on purpose, but it's okay. You might actually extend the value of your pass if you do.
Travis, how about you? Tell us about your companion pass history and strategy.
Yeah, sadly, it took me a while into my points on miles journey to earn my first companion pass, which is a bit of a shame since I live in a Southwest hub of Houston. Um, but when I first got into points, I really blew past 524, so wasn't able to pursue the cards needed to get the companion pass. I first earned it in probably impeccable timing of 2020. So I had my first companion pass for 2020 and 2021. Not really the best time to use it. Late 2021, I still was able to get some value out of it, but I decided to earn it again, or my P2 earned it in 2022, 2023. And we got a lot of value from it. You know, we go to Mexico a few times a year. I also went to Belize using my companion pass. So a number of domestic trips. We definitely got value from it, but I admittedly chose not to renew it in 2024 because I'm just not a Southwest guy. I don't like the model. You know, if you haven't come to a meetup and met me, you've only heard my voice or seen me over a screen. You'll know that I'm tall. I'm like 6'4". So I like to know where I'm sitting on a plane. That matters a lot to me. So the Southwest model just doesn't appeal to me. I started looking for reasons to not fly Southwest rather than to fly them. So chose not to renew it, but it doesn't mean that I didn't get a ton of value. We used it for repositioning flights, short domestic flights. We in fact had a list before we earned it in 2020. We had a list of places to go, even just for weekend trips. You know, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, Denver, a long list that some got checked off, some didn't. You know, we even joked about, oh, let's just fly up to New York for a nice dinner one night and then fly home with the companion pass.
Yeah.
Never did any of that, but certainly found ways to get value from it. My physiological structure just is a pre-existing condition to dislike Southwest.
Yes. Yeah. So does the future of assigned seating change that for you, or still no?
You know, it actually does. The future of assigned seating is really, really appealing to me for Southwest. I know that a lot of Southwest people are not looking forward to it, but I'm the person who, it's a reason why I've chose not to fly Southwest, and that it very well could convince me to open a reconsideration line within my heart.
Love it. And then for me, I've been a very heavy user of Southwest Companion Pass. I think I had it for about a decade straight. Early in my points and miles journey, that was like the primary focus, and I would use it to just do weekend trips as often as possible. Sometimes even for like a single night, just because I could. So my wife and I would go all over the place, kind of with initially, and then as we've had kids, with one kid, used it wonderfully, kind of flying around like that. But actually, I very notably and publicly divorced with Companion Pass this year for the first time. That was a surprisingly controversial episode. But it's becoming less of a thing for me because my wife and I now have 3 children, so 5 travelers, and kind of like the incremental value of getting like one of those tickets for free is less and less and less. It's one thing if it's like, all right, one of our 3 tickets is free, sure, we'll take a layover, or a less convenient flight, fine. But when it's only 20% of your tickets now at 1 in 5, it's like, let's consider other options. But I got a lot out of it. I'd be curious to see where I stand on like the lifetime leaderboard of companion pass tickets taken. I've got to be near 100 at this point. And maybe I'll return to it at some point, but it was lovely while it lasted.
I feel like for a family like yours, it's really nice, right? Because you're not reliant on award availability to to open up. If there's a seat, you can book it. Sure, you can't take Southwest to Europe or Asia or Australia, but it's a great way to get good value for a domestic flight for a family, especially if you have more than one kid. If you've got two, each of the parents could earn a companion pass, and there you go. You've got your whole family covered. So it's one of those, when I hear of people looking for ways to make things easier for family travel, the companion pass for, let's just call it North America travel, just feels like a no-brainer.
That's a better way to phrase it than in my notes. I have quotes: domestic-ish travel.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, there are some things to consider before attempting to earn a Southwest Companion Pass that we're going to jump into next. And the first and definitely the most important one is the timing. Emily, can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. So Travis kind of walked us through how you need to earn it. So earning 135,000 rapid rewards points in a calendar year, not a 12-month period, just straight from January 1st to December 31st. So any points that post between January and December of 2024 will not count towards earning it in 2025. So a lot of times you're familiar with how the minimum spends work. You usually have 3 months to meet minimum spends. So that's why the timing here is so important, because if you start the card strategy in September, 3 months is going to put you in December of 2024 and not January of 2025. So the timing here is to start sometime in mid to late October or even later. But mid to late October is going to be really like the earliest, because then that 3-month period will mean that as long as you don't hit your minimum spend before January 1st, 2025, your points will not post in 2024, and they'll count towards you trying to earn it in 2025 to get it for the maximum period that you can have the companion pass. So pay close attention there. If you sign up for the companion pass mode in My 10X, it'll greatly help you. Keep an eye on things. We see a lot of mistakes happen early on, and that's just common ways that you meet the minimum spend early. You add your card to your Apple Wallet and you use it to take the subway, and by accident, you spend $2.90 over your minimum spend before you're supposed to. Don't do that. Don't add your cards to your wallets. Don't add them to your Amazon accounts, your Walmart accounts. Don't open an authorized user card and give it to someone that you don't trust.
Good advice anyway.
Yeah,
but
well, yeah, in general. But don't go holiday shopping with your cards and forget that you're trying to keep an eye on your minimum spend. Just try and eliminate all the possible ways that this could go wrong for you, and make sure that your sign up bonuses and your qualifying spend and points are not posting until at least January 1st of next year.
Yeah, the P2 being helpful always seems to be the biggest one that gets people. And they'll say, my P2 has never used the card that I've asked them to. I've struggled to get them doing it. And now they said, oh, hey, I remembered you asked me to use this card. And it's holiday season. And I just used this card for all of the holiday spending because I know that I haven't been on board, but I'm trying. And it messes things up. Now is not the time to give that authorized user card to your P2. Hold back.
You know what?
The time will come.
What got me last year was a big purchase that got exchanged. So we thought that the credit had hit from exchanging it, and then went to repurchase it, and the timing just didn't line up, and so we went over the minimum spend. So don't do that either.
Yeah, and things get real weird when there's refunds.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that can still count toward the spend, and it just gets infinitely complex. And especially when folks start so early, I think the thing that a lot of people forget is that starting earlier, like in super early October, is not necessarily going to help you earn Companion Pass faster than someone who starts on Thanksgiving. It's all going to happen early in the next year. So just patience. Take your time. Know that if you start after the first week of December, it's virtually impossible to screw up the timing. So if you're worried about it, just wait and start at that point.
Yeah. And if you start October 5th, that's going to leave you 2 or 3 days in January to finish your minimum spend. and don't start off your New Year's with that extra additional stress. In fact, most people aren't relying on their companion pass to book a trip in January or even February. So if you're trying to earn it the earliest you possibly can, but you're not actually going to use it until March, spring break, May, Memorial Day, summertime, it doesn't matter if you earn it in January on January 1st versus February 17th.
Yeah, just patience is the key there. I think another thing to keep in mind as you're kind of considering whether you want to earn Southwest Companion Pass is it's important to view it as a quantity over quality play. So what I see a lot is people who will ask questions. They'll say, "I'm not sure if Companion Pass is a good choice for me because Southwest isn't really the best airline out of our home airport." I'm like, yes, that's true of pretty much everywhere that Southwest is. That's kind of their thing. Like they're not the most convenient, but you do get a bulk amount of travel and the ability to get buy one get one for nearly 2 years. So don't approach it as, I want this because I already like Southwest the most. Approach it as, I'm willing to put up with the potential less convenient flights or times or et cetera, because I'm going to get 3 to 4 of them for free worth of points, and then the ability to have buy one get one for a couple of years. So that's pretty typical when people are looking at this.
And the thing on that too is, I know I'm just Mr. Commentary today. The thing on that too is, if Southwest isn't the best carrier, the most convenient carrier at your home airport, most likely no airline actually is. Right? Let's pick a random airport
targeted
like
as a Columbus,
Ohio.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
It's not a hub for any airline. So if you're flying United, you're probably connecting in Chicago, Newark, Houston, Denver. If you're flying Delta, you're probably connecting in Minneapolis or Detroit. So if you're already at an airport where Southwest isn't the convenient option, there's probably not another airline that is. You're just using it as a reason to avoid Southwest without realizing that just applies to every airline. And so it kind of becomes a moot point. Whereas if you are somewhere like Denver or Houston where it is convenient, that's great. So there's a lot of other options where it's convenient too. So like you don't have to worry about it. So really, like there's very few airports that come to mind where Southwest isn't a hub where another airline is. And weirdly, mostly those are Delta hubs like Atlanta, Salt Lake. I don't think those are Southwest hubs, but they are Delta hubs. But almost everywhere else, Chicago, they've got Midway. Houston, they've got Hobby. Denver, they've got Denver. LA, they fly to like every single airport in LA. Same thing with San Francisco. So it's kind of not really a unique reason to actually avoid Southwest, because if you pick another option, it's probably going to be just as inconvenient as Southwest would be anyways. You're just not necessarily thinking about that.
Yeah, I can't think of a single kind of scenario in which I would say to someone like, "Oh no, Companion Pass is not a good idea for you at your airport that Southwest flies to because X reason." Like, of course, if you don't live near an airport where Southwest flies, that's one thing. But if Southwest flies to your airport, Companion Pass is worth considering. Full stop.
Yeah.
So
it's all just comes down to personal preference. Like I know people who don't think that the Companion Pass will be valuable living in New York because they only fly out of LaGuardia, and LaGuardia is super inconvenient to get to. So fair,
yeah,
but you still could get value out of it. It's still an option if you choose to kind of like deprioritize your airport rankings. But generally, I agree.
Is LaGuardia any more inconvenient than JFK or definitely Newark?
Well, yeah, I think the public, I mean, it could have changed since I've lived there, but I think the public transportation to get to LaGuardia is a lot more inconvenient than it would be to get to JFK or Newark.
That's fair. As a non-resident, I forget that public transportation is a thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Shout out to Houston Public Transit. A couple more things to keep in mind as you're kind of looking at whether you want Companion Pass. We mentioned this earlier, but you do get to keep the 135,000 plus points that helped you earn Companion Pass. So you have a nice head start with 2 to 4-ish free flights that you can take your companion on. And remember that Southwest flies to most, here I go, quote, domestic-ish locations. So that's everywhere within the continental 48, but also Hawaii and a lot of options in the Caribbean and Mexico. So many people will look at Southwest, they'll say that is a low-cost domestic carrier, which is mostly true, but that does miss that kind of important part that you can use this to take your family to Hawaii or to Mexico City or to Belize. The options are more than most realize. And then lastly, remember that Southwest is a great option for positioning flights. So even if you're not kind of a Southwest person and you don't anticipate doing weekend trips or you don't anticipate flying with other people super often, the ability to have those kind of super inexpensive flights on Southwest that are on the front or back end of maybe bigger redemptions with other carriers is very helpful, especially when you layer on the fact that Southwest makes it so easy to cancel and get everything back. It's a wonderful tool for that. So those are all things to kind of keep in mind. Next, let's talk about how to use the Companion Pass. We're going to talk about both before and after earning it. The before part's a little bit more nuanced, but let's start by kicking over here, Travis. Can you tell us how you use Companion Pass after you earn it?
I sure can. And it's easy. You make your reservation for whoever has the Companion Pass. So if I've got the Companion Pass, I book it for myself. And then I go in to Southwest and I click Add Companion and I add my companion. It's very easy. You just go into your bookings, click Add Companion. Super duper simple. Again, it's just like any other Southwest ticket. So they'll get their own confirmation number. They'll still have to check in themselves separately. All of the same Southwest rules apply. It's just a normal ticket. You're just pretty much not having to pay additional cash or points except for the taxes and fees for. And again, the emphasis here is on any Southwest booking. The exception is you can't stack companion passes. So if I had one and Bryce had one, and I made Bryce my companion, and then Bryce made Emily his companion, I couldn't book my ticket, add Bryce as a companion, and then Bryce goes in and adds Emily as a companion, and we've only paid for one ticket and gotten two.
Or potentially endless. We could team up with 10x readers and fill an entire plane. Yeah, for one ticket.
So you can't daisy chain the companion pass, but that's fine. And you can use it on both cash tickets and award tickets. So if you're just paying cash for it, that's great. Add your companion. If you're using those 135,000 points that you earned while earning companion pass, also great. You can add your companion to those. Again, the restrictions are there has to be a seat available, and you can't stack a companion pass, and it has to be a person, not a cat or a dog or other animal.
Right. And you can only change your companion 3 times in 1 year.
Correct. Yeah, you can only change your companion 3 times in 1 year. Additionally, one of our recommendations is to book one-way flights instead of round trip. If you have to make any changes, it just makes it easier later to make changes to one flight. And you might be saying, I don't change my flights that often. With Southwest, I actually find that I changed my flights more often than with anyone else. And it's primarily because if Southwest lowers the price, you can just cancel your ticket and book another one and pocket the difference. So to do that, you would have to cancel your companion's ticket. You always have to do that first. Then cancel or change your own ticket, get the refund, then add your companion back. If you're doing that on a round trip, you're just having to rebook multiple legs. Whereas if it's a one-way, it's simple. You just do it once. So reduces some complications.
I find
when you inevitably make.
I find that I change mine so often that I have to keep a record of what the new confirmation code is, because I'll have so many for essentially the same trip that I'm taking. And then if I cancel and then opt to take the $5.60 refund as a credit, then I have to remember what that confirmation code is to reuse it when I rebook it. So maybe other people can relate to this, or maybe I'm just the only one. But
yeah, and one of the more common situations here that we see people overlook is that ability for other people to book a ticket on Southwest for the companion pass holder, and then the companion pass holder to add a companion ticket. So what we see is it's like, oh, hey, my spouse and I want to travel. I, the companion pass holder, have no Southwest points. My spouse has a bunch of Southwest points. Like, how do we do this? Can they transfer them to me? No, it's even easier. Have your partner book your Southwest flight in your name, and then you just hop into your account and add the companion ticket. It could even be of that person. So as long as you're flying and not someone's companion, you can use it.
Yeah, or if work's paying for your ticket and your spouse wants to come along, Cool. Like it doesn't matter who paid for it. It shows up in the companion, as long as someone paid for it and the ticket is booked in the companion pass holder's name. Boop, add your companion.
It's so easy. And I guess, and if you earn a companion pass and you're still kind of not comfortable with how this works and how to add a companion ticket, because it's refundable, just do it to practice.
Yeah.
Just book any Southwest flight, add a companion, be like, oh, that was fun, and then hop in 10 minutes later and cancel it. And you've actually gone through the motions with no harm, no foul.
It's one of those things that people think like, right? It's such a high value proposition. You think that it should be harder and have more restrictions than it does. And that's what gets people is, right, they're doing it for the first time. And they think this shouldn't be this easy, but it is. And that's the great thing about it is it's easy to get that value from it. It's easy to do. There's few restrictions you have to work within, right?
Yeah.
And so just like don't overthink it.
I think
that kind of rolls up into like a general thing to know, or a trend that I often say when I ask about Companion Pass, is that what we see is that most of our readers who are kind of on the fence about Companion Pass end up kind of using it and enjoying it much more than they thought that they would. And we see them then come back and want to like try to earn it again and again. So if you're kind of on the fence and not really sure about this, just know that most people in your position end up being very happy that they went for it.
I also think it's kind of a great entry point into this hobby. And I know there's some complex things about timing it and, business cards and things that might make you uncomfortable at first. But from what I've seen and a few of the friends that I've helped, when they get the companion pass and they realize how often and how easily they can travel on points, then they come back and they want to know what's next. Like, how can they do more? How do they get business class from here? So I know it's not maybe the most commonly recommended entry point, but if you're looking for a really effective way to convince some people who haven't taken you up on your advice yet to get involved in this hobby, I think the companion pass is a pretty good convincing one.
Completely agree. Next up, a couple of things to know about how to potentially, I'm air quoting here, use your companion pass before you actually receive it. There is some strategy to consider, kind of like making plans to get the most out of it, even before it's technically in your account. So the first thing to know is consider booking any future Southwest flights right away and then adding your companion pass later. Again, even if you haven't earned it yet. So if you're going through a conventional process of earning companion pass, it's really early in the calendar year, maybe you have a spring break trip coming up in March, you can go ahead and book the flights of the companion pass holder like now using cash points, whatever. Wait to earn companion pass until after January 1 and then add it at that time. And that allows you to kind of lock in a flight now, get that price set, and then you can add a companion as long as there's a seat open on the flight. And I will tell you that hearing that is concerning for a lot of people. They get very worried, like, oh, and naturally so. Like, I don't want to have to tell my family that we can't go on spring break because I was trying to do this points thing and it's sold out. It's incredibly rare that happens, especially lately. And there are some other strategies you can employ to kind of get ahead of that. But do know that that is more secure than you probably realize. And of course, make sure you don't screw up your companion pass timing and you actually do end up.
It's like, it's kind of the one like speculative booking or speculative thing that actually is fine.
Yeah, pretty low risk.
98% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's not, those people are going to be very mad at us for saying that. And I'm sorry.
Well, I guess the positive of even if you screwed up and you don't get the companion pass, you'll still have some points. So you could still probably book your trip for your people who were going to be your companion.
That's true. And that dovetails beautifully into the next point I have here is that you can redeem your Southwest points without restriction, and that has no impact on your earning companion pass. So if you, maybe the first bonus post, you got a bunch of Southwest points, you're still waiting to get over 135,000, you could cash in all of them if you wanted to, and it has no impact on earning companion pass. So do spend them. Southwest has free cancellations for award bookings. So really there's no reason not to spend Southwest points. I tend to approach them almost like dinner reservations. Like if I think there's even a chance that I want to go to Las Vegas next weekend and I have Southwest points, book it and just hold it. And you can cancel it all the way up pretty much till the moment of the flight. You get all your points back. And as long as you remember to select refund instead of keep for future credit, that $5.60 fee goes back to your card. So you can just start deploying them like crazy. However, I will say that there is not like a surefire way to like hold future seats that you will swap toward a companion pass. So we see this asked all the time. It's like, hey, how can I guarantee that I can book like 4 seats on this flight? And then if I earn companion pass later, can I just like call Southwest and ask them to like, quote, swap one of them for a companion ticket? They don't allow that. You're going to have to cancel and rebook. But that is something to consider, like especially if you have a lot of Southwest points and you're worried about a trip that's early in the year, go ahead and book a separate itinerary for every single traveler. And then when you get companion pass, you can just cancel the itinerary of whoever your companion is and immediately rebook as a companion ticket. That works well. But just know that there's not ever a way in which you can like absolutely guarantee, like I already have this seat, but I'm just going to swap the type of ticket. It doesn't work that way. You do want to give some thought to whether you want to use transferable points in that scenario. So the common situation is, hey, I have a bunch of these points that can transfer to Southwest. Should I transfer them and then book a bunch of seats and kind of hold those for a companion pass use later? That's where things get a little bit more dicey, because if it does work out and you end up swapping one for companion pass, those are not going back to transferable points. Like they're stuck in Southwest, and you'll probably use them because you have a companion pass. But just know that there is like a bit of a loss of value that does occur there. And that's not as much of a no-brainer. You have to kind of balance those two things. And of course, do remember that transfer does not count toward earning companion pass, because some highly intelligent individuals overlook that, and they otherwise are just on their game except for that one time.
Right.
Yeah. I'll kind of take this opportunity to distract from Bryce transferring points to try to earn his companion pass, and definitely not continuing to use it as a chance to give him a hard time about it. And instead, segue off a cliff into just talking really briefly, because I know you've been listening to a number of my, I don't know, mini sessions. That's what I'll call them. This is a Travis mini session. Because Bryce brought up a good point about transferring points as part of the strategy to hold a seat for someone. And I kind of just want to talk briefly, and I know that when I say I'm going to talk briefly, you don't actually believe me, but I'm going to talk briefly about transferring points to Southwest and whether or not you should. Southwest award chart is it's a fixed cost award chart. So instead of them saying flights within the US cost 5,000 points each at a saver level, they're tied to the cost of the flight, typically around 1.4 to 1.5 cents each per point, which is pretty decent. Depending on what cards you have, that might be your minimum redemption value, or your minimum redemption value might be lower. So it is a great, it means it's fine to transfer the points. So you might be asking yourself, well, do I want to transfer the points, or do I want to book through a bank's travel portal? And while you could book through the travel portal, I think generally if you need to book a Southwest flight, especially if you're a companion pass person or a companion pass holder, I would advise to actually transfer the points to Southwest. Yes, if you cancel, they are stuck with Southwest, whereas if you book through the bank's travel portal, you'll get them back there. But the reasoning just comes in with making those changes. If you go through the bank and you need to make changes or cancel, you're going to have to go through the bank every time, which is going to be a lot more tedious than going through Southwest. So transferring those points lets you do it all online on Southwest to make those changes. And, usually it's, let's call it what, 10 to 15,000 points per leg. It's not breaking the bank. And since you have Companion Pass, you're likely going to use them again in the future if you end up canceling. Anyways, and since the value at Southwest is essentially at your minimum redemption value that you would get from booking through the bank anyways, sure, you might be missing out on potential upside, but you know that you're getting that value now. So my general advice is don't overcomplicate it by going through the bank's portal, transfer the points to Southwest if you're needing those points to make the booking. Just remember, those points that you transfer don't count.
You had to do with that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, good thoughts. I do think it'd probably be fair to say that a Southwest points program more broadly is probably the most like beginner friendly one on the entire market, right? There's transferable points that go in that happens instantly. almost always instantly. Free cancellations on award bookings. There's no blackout dates whatsoever. Their points are like fixed-ish. They're right around that 1.4 to 1.5 cents each. So there's not any thought around like, is this saver level or like, is there a better deal out there? It kind of just flows with the cash price. Just makes it incredibly easy to start to learn the basics. And once you do, just know that everyone else makes it a little bit harder. And that's unfortunate, but Southwest is great in that way. So really, like, bottom line, companion pass stuff, it's nuanced. It sounds like there's a lot of exceptions to it, but like high level, the strategy is pretty straightforward. You need to earn 135,000 Southwest points in a single calendar year. It's easiest to do that with a credit card strategy that's explained in great detail on our site, or even better, use our companion pass mode in My 10X to just make that entire process completely foolproof. Once you earn companion pass, it's pretty easy to use. You'll get the hang of it once you actually get in there and try it. And just know that most people undervalue companion pass because they assume that there's some sort of restriction or problem with it. Like, they end up getting it and liking it a lot more than they thought that they would. And then they often come back and they start emailing us. They say, how do I do that again and again and again? So that's kind of the big things to know about companion pass. Any other kind of big thoughts, finishing thoughts here from either of you before we kind of wrap it up for the day?
I'll close with this. And Emily kind of said the same thing earlier. So I just want to reiterate for people. What I find is that most people who are on the fence about the companion pass end up actually getting more value from it than they think they are. It's very easy to find value. It's very easy to realize the value. It's so much simpler than you think it is going to be to get the value. So if you're not 100% certain that it is not for you, I would recommend giving it a try. Both Bryce and I have found reasons not to do it in the future, but you'll notice that the reasons we chose is not because of the value that we've gotten from it. It just kind of comes down to travel personalities, I guess you could call it, or personal preferences. So if you're unsure, I'd give it a try, because worst case, after 2 years, you realize you're not getting the value and you don't look to renew it. But most people, I find, end up getting more value from it than they even think they're going to upfront, which is why, even though I personally chose not to get it this year, I still emphatically recommend it to a number of people as a great no-brainer value in points and miles.
Emily, any other
thoughts?
That's
y'all were waiting for more, but
oh yeah.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think it's a good summary. I think, it's just a super easy way to realize how much value you can get out of traveling with points and miles.
Indeed. All right, let's start to wrap this up. We have a ton of resources to help you master the world of points and miles. In addition to this podcast, first one, sign up to be a 10X Travel Plus member. That's our paid membership program that gives you access to 2 one-on-one consults with our 10 experts and up to 1 free award booking every single year. Just makes using points and miles easy. Make sure to manage your points and miles in My 10X, our free tool that helps you see everything in one place and has a My Next Card feature. It takes out the guesswork of finding the best card in your wallet, and also has Southwest Companion Pass mode to help you navigate all the complexities of this strategy as you move through it. Be sure to join our Facebook group, where over 350,000 insiders come together to share their points and miles knowledge, and also to sheepishly say that they screwed up companion pass timing and oops, and here's how I did it. So we can all have fun kind of seeing the many ways that you can screw that up. And finally, be sure to enroll or brush up on our free course that teaches you how to travel the world for next to nothing. You can find that at 10xtravel.com/course or linked in the show notes. For all of us here at 10X Travel, I'm Bryce. Thanks for listening to Take Off, a Points and Miles podcast by 10X Travel. We will talk to you next time. Bye.